President Obama will deliver his State of the Union address on Tuesday. You can watch the address and continuing coverage of the speech right here on CBSN starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. And Major Garrett tells us what we can expect.
Over the weekend, the White House proposed $320 billion in new taxes, achieved by raising the tax rate on investments for the top 1% of earners and closing inheritance loopholes for the wealthy. The White House says the new tax revenue would pay for all of the president's new spending plans. Among them, free tuition for community college students who maintain a 2.5 grade point average. Total cost, $60 billion.
The doors of higher education shouldn't be a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This is an American issue.
In the run-up to tomorrow's speech, the president has called for 6 weeks of paid family leave for federal workers, reductions to federal mortgage insurance fees, new subsidies for rural broadband access, and a new push for consumer cybersecurity protections.
If we're going to be connected, then we need to be protected. As Americans, we shouldn't have to forfeit our basic privacy when we go online to do our business.
Top Republicans who now run Congress have branded the tax plan dead on arrival. Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
The notion, first of all, that in order for some people to do better, someone has to do worse, is just not true. Raising taxes on people that are successful is not going to make people that are struggling more successful.
Okay, joining us now with more is CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto here in New York, and from D.C., our Washington, D.C. Bureau Senior Political Editor Steve Chaggaris. Welcome to both of you. Steve, first of all, to you. So if they've already laid out much of what we're going to hear in the speech tomorrow night, what's the strategy?
I mean, he's talking to Congress, really. That's what this speech is for. He decided to lay it out to the American public in person in the weeks leading up to the speech. But this is really to talk to what is the first full Republican House and Senate that he's facing in his presidency. So this is really to just talk specifically to members of Congress.
Anthony, from what you've seen polling-wise, what does the president need to do?
Well, the context here is that views on the economy are going up. Right? For the first time since the beginning of the recession, people are starting to say that they think the economy is good and that it's heading in the right direction. But there's no consensus on what we do from here. And part of that is the president's going to try and set his agenda, but also voters in the midterms told Republicans as they were electing them that they wanted some action too.
On the subject of those Republicans, let's talk about the CBS News poll about who people would like to see run on the Republican side. Some new numbers out. What surprised you?
Well, everybody wants a lot of people to get into the race. Now, at the top of should they run, which is the question we asked, Mitt Romney, Jeb Bush all do well. Most Republicans want to see them in. But the fact is that most Republican voters want to see 2, 3, 4 of these candidates all get in. People want choice, and we're going to see it. We're going to see a wide open field.
Steve, any surprises in the poll?
The one surprise I thought was the number of people who didn't want Chris Christie to jump in. I thought that was a bit of a surprise. He was out there campaigning really hard for Republican governors and gubernatorial candidates last year, raised a lot of money for those folks, and had was pretty successful. They got a lot of folks elected. And his negative number I thought was pretty high, which was surprising. I
want to jump back quickly to the speech tomorrow night and talk a little bit more about the tax plan, which is getting the most attention because that's what the president wants to get the most attention. Anthony, it's been called sort of this Robin Hood plan. Take from the rich, give to the poor. This is an issue that both parties are talking about right now.
The fact is that 4 out of 10 Republican voters in the midterms said that they also thought that the U.S. economic system favored the wealthy. So it's not something that Republicans can ignore either. A lot of their voters span a lot of income levels, and a lot of them feel that the economy isn't working for them. So it's something they need to address as well.
Steve, your take on that?
Well, you're hearing a lot of potential Republican candidates actually address this issue. You're hearing guys like Rick Santorum, but more surprisingly, people like Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney, two Republicans who you're not really considered as advocates for the poor, but and being pretty wealthy themselves. And so Mitt Romney on Friday night, who spoke to the Republican Party, really that was one of the pillars of his speech, is trying to help lift people out of poverty and talking about income inequality, which was very interesting.
And Anthony, as we move forward here, it looks like Governor Bush sort of jumped out there first. Mitt Romney has his toe in the water, or maybe his full foot in the water now. one would expect the dominoes to fall pretty quickly as 2015 moves on here?
Yeah, I think so, because they're all going to need to raise money. And some of them, like Bush, like Christie, like maybe Romney, are all going to be raising money from a lot of the same people. So that sort of the money primary, that started early, right? But then there's going to be another set, the Rand Pauls, maybe the Ted Cruzes, et cetera, who are going to run sort of more of outsiders, certainly from maybe a more ideological race. And they may raise money from different sources, but that's a wing of the party that I think gets started early as well, because they're going to have to build name recognition to go after the Romneys and the Bushes who already have it.
Steve Chaggaris in Washington, D.C., Anthony Salvanto in New York, thanks to both of you.
Thanks, Jeff.